$1 billion complex, 20 hectares of ground, a 4-stage build, and a label no one on the planet has managed to confirm. Back in May 2026, the head of the Romanian Senate got up and dropped an announcement that rippled across Eastern Europe. Romania, he claimed, was about to host the planet's very first quantum artificial intelligence data center. Not in Germany, not in the Netherlands, not in Ireland, the usual spots where the tech giants plant their server farms, but in a modest commune called Luna, tucked inside Cluj County, Romania. If true, this would launch a nation more commonly linked to castles and legends straight into the heart of the global tech competition. But here's the question that almost no one in Romania's mainstream press was brave enough to ask out loud. Is any of this actually legitimate? If you've ever wondered how one small Facebook post can snowball into worldwide headlines, stick around, because this tale has more twists than anybody saw coming. Let's begin with what was actually stated, because in this case the exact wording matters more than you'd expect. Marcel Ciolacu, president of the Romanian Senate, posted on Facebook that he'd just held a meeting with representatives from an American firm called Driver AI. According to his post, this company was on the verge of constructing the world's first data center running on quantum artificial intelligence, right in Luna Commune. He laid out 4 construction phases across 20 hectares, with just the first phase demanding roughly $1 billion in investment. He wrote that any American investment in Romania amounts to an investment in the country's security, framing the whole thing as evidence of a strengthening partnership between Romania and the United States. If you're starting to think this sounds too good to be true, for a country that isn't exactly famous for quantum computing, you're far from alone, and that gut feeling is precisely what pushed people to start investigating. Go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, because this story only gets weirder from here. Ciolacu didn't stop at that. He claimed that students and researchers from top universities in Cluj would get what he called unmatched access to advanced GPU computing power and quantum hardware. He even declared the project would turn Romania into what he called an anchor of innovation for Europe. Bold statements for one Facebook post. He linked the announcement back to a trip he took to Washington in February 2026, hinting that this deal had been quietly brewing at the highest levels of government for months. For a nation that spent years chasing serious foreign tech investment, this seemed like hitting the jackpot. Romanian outlets picked it up almost instantly, and international tech media followed close behind. Within days, headlines were calling it a landmark moment for Eastern European technology. But somewhere between the press release and the fine print, cracks started to show. So who exactly is this Driver AI company, the one apparently about to pour $1 billion into rural Cluj County? This is where the story takes a genuinely stunning turn. Based on investigative work from Romanian business outlet Ziarul Financiar, Driver AI LLC was registered in Arizona back in July 2024, less than 2 years before this supposed billion-dollar reveal. Its registered address isn't some sleek office tower or a tech campus. It's a residential house in Peoria, Arizona, a quiet suburb nowhere near Silicon Valley or any major data center corridor. LinkedIn records that journalists checked suggest the company employs somewhere between 11 and 50 people. Just 11 to 50 individuals, allegedly building what's supposed to be the world's first quantum AI mega facility. If your jaw just hit the floor, hit that subscribe button because we haven't even reached the strangest part yet. Here's the detail that should really stop you cold. Driver AI's actual commercial products have absolutely nothing to do with quantum computing or data centers. Their main offerings go by the names Zip-E and Spark-E. Zip-E is an augmented reality shopping navigation app, the kind of tool meant to help you locate a product on a store shelf. Spark-E is a conversational AI assistant built to boost the average size of a shopping cart, essentially a chatbot designed to upsell people while they shop online. These are retail tech products, plain and simple. There's no documented link whatsoever to hyperscale infrastructure, quantum hardware, or anything close to the engineering required to build an 80-megawatt data center. Picture hiring a grocery app developer to build you a nuclear reactor. That's roughly the size of the credibility gap researchers have uncovered here, and it's exactly why so many experts raise their eyebrows. Like and subscribe right now if you're as floored by this as we were. The leadership team behind Driver AI doesn't do much to close that gap either. The founder and CEO is Carrie Tantlinger. The chief technology officer, Tracy Simons, comes from a telecommunications background and previously worked with the Defense Information Systems Agency. Impressive sounding, sure, but not the same thing as experience building quantum computing infrastructure. The Chief Operating Officer, Aidan Mulligan, is a West Point graduate, currently earning an MBA at the University of Chicago. The Chief Financial Officer, Jacob Weinberg, is described as a business strategist and military veteran. Notice what's absent from every single one of these bios. Not one of these executives has any documented, verifiable background in data center development, hyperscale construction, or quantum computing operations. These are the people supposedly set to deliver one of the most technically demanding infrastructure projects on Earth. If this is starting to feel like a house of cards, your instincts are correct, and that's exactly why this story is worth your attention. Don't scroll past without liking this video first. Now let's talk money, because the financial side is just as foggy as the technical one. Per that same investigation, Driver AI's cited funding sources include the University of Arizona Center for Innovation and the U.S. National Science Foundation. Here's the catch. These organizations typically hand out grants ranging from tens of thousands to a few $100,000. They exist to help early-stage startups get off the ground, not to fund a billion-dollar hyperscale data center campus. There's a massive, almost comical gap between the funding these institutions actually provide and the capital needed to build even the first 20-megawatt phase of this project. Nobody has pinpointed where the actual $1 billion is supposed to originate. No bank has been named, no private equity firm has been named, no sovereign wealth backer has come forward. Just a figure repeated in press statements with nothing visible standing behind it. This is precisely the kind of red flag that makes seasoned analysts deeply uneasy. So if you're feeling that same unease, smash that like button right now. It didn't take long before voices from inside Romania's own tech scene started speaking up. George Roth, a Romanian-American software entrepreneur and former collaborator with UiPath, one of Romania's biggest tech success stories, publicly and pointedly criticized the entire project. In essence, Roth argued that ambition on its own isn't enough, and that infrastructure projects of this magnitude demand independent, serious vetting before any government gets involved. Think about what that really means. Someone from Romania's actual tech success story is publicly warning that this deal hasn't been properly checked out. Roth specifically asked whether Driver AI had locked in any partnerships with major quantum computing firms, cloud providers, semiconductor manufacturers, or research institutions. He also reasonably asked whether the source of the funding is transparent and verifiable. These are exactly the questions any due diligence team would raise before greenlighting a billion-dollar deal. And according to Roth, satisfying answers just weren't there. If you respect someone willing to ask the tough questions, now's the time to subscribe. Roth pushed further, raising operational concerns the political announcement had completely skipped over. He asked about energy demand and grid strain, since an 80-megawatt facility would need enormous amounts of stable power in a region where infrastructure is already stretched. He asked about water cooling requirements, a crucial detail for any large-scale data center, since cooling breakdowns can shut whole facilities down. He even asked whether Driver AI had identified who its actual clients would be. Would it serve Romanian state institutions, European companies, global AI firms? Nobody seemed to have an answer, including apparently the people making the announcement. Roth also took direct aim at the quantum AI label itself, calling it vague and arguing that what currently exists in this space should be described as experimental or hybrid quantum classical research infrastructure, not production-ready technology customers could actually depend on. In other words, even if the project were completely real, the label being used to sell it could still be misleading. Which brings us to a much bigger question that goes well beyond one small commune in Cluj County. What does quantum AI even mean in 2026? Here's the uncomfortable truth few politicians want to admit. Researchers who actually study this field say quantum AI isn't about running massive language models on quantum processors, and it's definitely not about swapping out the neural networks powering chatbots and image generators for quantum circuits. What it actually means is much narrower, identifying very specific, narrow computational tasks where quantum mechanics might offer some edge, and using artificial intelligence to help finicky, error-prone quantum computers run more reliably. Companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft, and Amazon are genuinely investing at this intersection, but their own scientists openly acknowledge that fully operational large-scale quantum AI systems simply don't exist yet. There's even a running joke inside the quantum computing world that the technology is always 3 to 5 years away, no matter how much time actually passes. That's exactly why the phrase quantum AI has become such fertile ground for hype and in some cases outright misuse. Analysts who track this space have pointed out that the term gets tossed around as a buzzword that sounds impressive without needing any real technical substance behind it. In fact, this exact phrase has already been weaponized once before in a completely different context. There have been so-called quantum AI trading platforms online, promising to combine quantum computing and artificial intelligence to guarantee profits in crypto and stock trading. Financial regulators in several countries have issued public warnings about these platforms, calling them scams that target people who don't know enough about the underlying tech to spot the warning signs. The pattern is eerily familiar. Grab two futuristic-sounding words, glue them together, and use the resulting buzzword to dodge the scrutiny a more honestly labeled project would face. Whether that's exactly what's happening in Cluj-Napoca is up to you to decide, but the parallel is hard to miss. And if you're noticing it too, hit subscribe now. So where does that leave the actual physical project on the ground in Luna Commune? Reports indicate the facility is meant to sit within an industrial and technology park being developed by a company called the Leviathan Group. A separate firm, E-Infra, has been named as the partner handling power supply and energy systems. Yet another company, Karstens Consulting Global, has stepped in to manage project coordination and what's described as institutional oversight. On the surface, this creates the impression of a fully assembled team, but naming partners isn't the same as having binding, fully financed contracts locked in. Romania's broader data center market genuinely has been expanding, fueled by European Union digital sovereignty initiatives and the country's geographic position bridging Western and Eastern Europe. Cluj-Napoca itself is a legitimate, well-regarded tech hub, home to skilled graduates from Babeș-Bolyai University and the Technical University of Cluj-Napoca. The region does have real potential, that much isn't in question. What is very much in question is whether this specific company, with this specific leadership and this specific funding picture, can actually pull off delivering an 80-megawatt hyperscale facility. And that's really the core of the issue, because Romania's underlying infrastructure isn't a guarantee for a project this size either. Unlike established European data center hubs such as Frankfurt, Amsterdam, or Dublin, Romania's power grid, permitting system, and available capacity for hyperscale operations remain considerably less developed. Multiple Romanian observers have flagged exactly this concern publicly. Just securing grid connections for an 80-megawatt campus is a massive undertaking that can take years of regulatory approval, even for established, well-funded operators with a proven track record. For a company that didn't even exist before July 2024, working out of a residential address in Arizona, led by a team built around shopping apps, that hurdle looks less like a formality and more like a brick wall. George Roth's proposed fix here is worth real attention. He suggested Romania set up independent committees made up of scientists, technologists, economists, financiers, and infrastructure specialists to evaluate major strategic tech projects before any official publicly backs them. His point was simple. This process needs to be professional, not political. A senator's Facebook post should never be the entire due diligence process a billion-dollar infrastructure project receives. Let's also look at the timeline itself, because timelines say a lot about whether a project is real or mostly theater. Driver A1 was registered in Arizona in July 2024. The Washington meeting Ciolacu referenced happened in February 2026, just a year and a half later. The public announcement in Luna Commune followed in May 2026, and by June, Driver AI was already being described in press coverage as moving forward with its plans. Language that implies momentum and progress, even though no independently confirmed construction, permitting, or financing milestones had actually been verified. Compare that to how genuine hyperscale data center projects typically unfold. Companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google usually spend years quietly locking down land rights, environmental permits, power purchase agreements, and construction contracts before ever going public. The fact that this entire arc, from a barely 2-year-old company to a billion-dollar international headline, happened so fast is itself a warning sign that experienced infrastructure analysts picked up on right away. Speed by itself isn't always a red flag, but speed without paperwork almost always is. And that gap is exactly what investigative journalists in Romania chose to dig into. There's also the question of how this story spread once it went public, and it's worth pausing here because it reveals something important about how political announcements travel today. Ciolacu's original claim came from a single Facebook post. From there, Romanian news aggregators picked it up, then international data center trade publications, then general business media. At every stage, the central claim that this would be the world's first quantum AI data center got repeated and reinforced, often without any additional independent verification added along the way. By the time skeptical, deeply reported pieces from outlets like Ziarul Financiar and other investigative platforms started circulating, the original headline had already circled the globe several times over. This is a pattern that keeps repeating in modern tech journalism. The exciting claim travels fast, the careful fact-check crawls, and by the time the fact-check catches up, millions of people have already accepted the original, unverified version as fact. If you've spotted this pattern with other tech stories too, you're not imagining things. And that's exactly why independent research channels like this one matter so much right now. It's also worth asking what Romania actually stands to win or lose here, no matter how this specific deal turns out. On one hand, the country has real, well-documented strengths that make it appealing to serious tech investors. Cluj-Napoca has genuinely built a reputation as a software engineering hub over the last decade, turning out graduates who go on to work at major global tech firms. Romania sits at a useful geographic crossroads between Western Europe and the Black Sea region, and EU policy has actively been pushing for more digital infrastructure outside the traditional hubs of Frankfurt, Amsterdam, and Dublin. All of that could make Romania a legitimate target for a real, well-financed data center operator down the road. On the other hand, if this particular project falls apart publicly after this much political hype, it risks creating a credibility problem that could make future, more serious investors wary of engaging with Romanian officials the next time a big announcement rolls around. Political capital spent on an unverified claim isn't easy to win back, and that's a risk every government takes when it rushes to claim a world first before the details are actually locked down. This case also fits into a much bigger global pattern worth understanding, because Romania is far from the only place where quantum and AI have been bolted together to generate headlines that outrun the underlying reality. Around the world, the race to be seen as a leader in next-generation computing has pushed governments, companies, and investors to adopt the terminology faster than the science itself has actually matured. Quantum computing remains, by the admission of the very scientists building it, in an early experimental stage, useful for narrow research problems, but nowhere near ready to power everyday consumer apps or replace the GPU-driven infrastructure running today's AI systems. When a politician or a company attaches the word quantum to a project, it instantly signals cutting-edge prestige, global competitiveness, and a kind of futuristic credibility that's hard to challenge in a press conference. That's exactly what makes the term so valuable for marketing, and exactly what makes it so easy to misuse, whether that misuse is deliberate or simply the result of officials repeating language handed to them without fully grasping it. So did Romania actually land the world's first quantum AI data center? Or did a small Arizona startup with a shopping app and a big dream talk a sitting Senate president into putting his political weight behind an unverified claim? Based on everything uncovered so far, the most honest answer sits somewhere uncomfortably in the middle. The land is real, the political enthusiasm is genuinely real. The announcement was made on record by a powerful elected official, complete with specific figures attached. But the company behind it has no documented history in data centers or quantum computing. Its leadership has no relevant track record. Its named funding sources don't come anywhere close to adding up to $1 billion. And the very term quantum AI being used to market this project is, according to people who actually understand the technology, more aspirational marketing than verified engineering. This is a story that will likely take months, maybe years, to fully play out, as permits either get approved or stall, as funding either shows up or quietly vanishes, and as driver AI either breaks ground in Luna Commune or fades from the headlines the same way it arrived. We'll be watching this one closely, and we think you should too. If you want to see how this unfolds, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because when the next chapter of this story breaks, you'll want to be first to know. Drop a comment telling us whether you think this project is the real deal or the biggest tech bluff Eastern Europe has seen in years. Tell us which detail surprised you most: the residential address in Arizona, the shopping apps, the missing $1 billion, or the senator who staked his credibility on a single Facebook post. Whichever side you land on, this is exactly the kind of story that gets buried under flashy headlines if nobody keeps asking questions, and that's exactly what we intend to keep doing. See you in the next video.